All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Mayday Monday. This is Mayday Monday for January of 2023. Sorry for the delay in the release, but the first Monday of the month was we were still out celebrating. We were still out recovering from our ringing in the new year. So before we get into it, before we get into the meat of the potatoes of this show here, I have to spend some time, or I would be remiss if I didn't spend some time to talk about Bobby Halton and the passing of Bobby Halton. A big loss for the fire service, a big loss for us that would consider him a friend. Big, really, I'm sure a huge loss for his family. I can tell you that Bobby was a friend of mine. He was a friend of Mayday Mondays. If it wasn't for his support with Mayday Mondays, we wouldn't be on fire engineering, and they wouldn't be, producing the show for us. I'm gonna miss our talks over coffee. I'll miss him coming on to the show and going off on one of his many tangents. I appreciate the time that I got to spend and got to know him. Again, there's a good picture of Bobby with me talking to Chief Sullivan from Worcester about the tragedy on the cold storage fire. So much for him. He had so much to add to that. Just even the history when it comes to why there's ice houses in these big towns. And there's obviously fire service history that he could provide as well. And that was really a joy for me when he came on and provided that insight. The other picture in the bottom right is at a Congressional Fire Service Institute dinner in DC. I think that was the night that I pitched him the idea about going with fire engineering, picking up the Mayday Monday idea, because we were just doing it in DC then. So thank you, Bobby. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for what you did for me. Thank you for what you did to the fire service. And you certainly will be missed. With that, like every Mayday Monday show, we want to talk real quick, review the line of duty deaths that have happened in the fire service since the last time we got together. Firefighter paramedic from Washington Township Fire Department in Ohio, Charles D. Swank. He died while attending required training. It was causes unknown at this time. Captain Robert Big Rob Moore from Kennett, Missouri Fire Department suffered a heart attack after fighting the morning after fighting a fire. Walker Hill, a captain with the Baton Rouge, Louisiana Fire Department, had a medical emergency on duty. It was apparently a CVA. Troy Dettinger, a volunteer chief with the Union Fire and Hose Company out of Dover, Pennsylvania, suffered a heart attack the morning after responding to an emergency call. Tragic incident, if you've been following, firefighter William P. Moon of FDNY was injured after a fall in the firehouse. They were preparing for training, and he suffered a head injury that he couldn't recover from. Bruce Lang, the training officer with the Pine Haven Volunteer Fire Department in Wyoming, drowned after his vehicle fell into an ice-covered lake while he was responding to a ice rescue call. Firefighter Mathis Wirtz of the North Haven, Connecticut Fire Department suffered a heart attack while he was pumping the apparatus at a house fire. And Brian Renberg, a firefighter with the North Park Fire Protection District in Illinois, suffered a heart attack after returning home from a fire incident. 96 firefighters were killed in the line of duty in 2022. We at Mayday Mondays want you to remember all of these fire service members, and let's do all we can to decrease that number and get that down. So with that, we're going to let's review last month's incident stuff here with the Mayday Monday. We have this one here. If you remember last month, we did a review of the Mayday Mondays from 2022. We did this with friend Jake Hoffman from the Toledo Fire Department. Jake provided us with some ideas about his RIT basics. We talked about, we covered a lot of the stuff from last year, the different skills and stuff that we learned from these close calls and line of duty deaths. And Jake was able to kind of walk us through some of the ideas that they use in Toledo with their writ procedures. And then again, last month, right? Really, we wanted you to go back and do some basics, thinking about the firefighter from New York, the Captain Jack Rose of Mount Marion, who passed away in a fire after an SCBA emergency or a lack of air emergency that he suffered there because he grabbed an air pack off of a neighboring jurisdiction and may have not been familiar with that. So just again, emphasizing the basics. And with that, with emphasizing the basics, that kind of brings us to this month's Mayday Monday. One thing you'll see, and you'll remember, right, from all following the Mayday Mondays throughout the years, is that my message here for you is that firefighter survival starts with the basics. Starts with the basics of training, starts with the basics of equipment, starts with the basics of attitude, it starts with the basics of experience. And all of those things are kind of what led me to talk to friends from Newport News, Virginia. With me tonight, we have 3 members here, 3 of the 4 that were involved kind of in being trapped in this building in Newport News. And we want to take a minute, let them kind of introduce themselves. We have one member, Brian Sanzo's on. He's on audio only with us tonight. Brian, will you go ahead and just kind of introduce yourself to everybody about and tell us who you are and what you're doing here?
Hey, Tony, I think he just caught a job.
Oh, he got a call.
Yep.
Awesome.
Looks like they got two fires going on right now uptown. So.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks, Brian. But let's talk to Steve. Go ahead.
So my name is Steve Gray. I was in Newport News for about 15 years. I was the engine lieutenant on Engine 2 the night or the morning rather when this incident occurred, and I worked downtown with across on the opposite shift, and my buddy Nick and Sanzo was actually the rescue lieutenant in the house on B shift, where I was stationed. So just a hard charging, busy, kind of grimy little engine house, 2 engines, a rescue and a medic, and just a super proud bunch of guys. And hopefully we can talk about, everything that went down that morning. And, somebody will say, hey, that could happen to us. But, like you said, this whole group of individuals was just totally focused on the fundamentals, training hard and looking out for each other. So.
Nick, can you just tell everybody a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, my name is Nick Crumpler. I was with the city of Newport News for 6 years. I was on Rescue 1 that night. I was a chauffeur, and that's really about it.
So Nick, you don't work in Newport News anymore?
I do not. I went federal. So.
Steve, so where are you now? Kitty Hawk?
Yeah, right now. So I've lived in Kill Devil Hills, part of the Outer Banks for almost 6 years, and I was making that commute back to Newport News, 10 or 11 days a month, not counting the overtime and all the ancillary duties, if that's what you want to call it. But I've been working part-time in Kitty Hawk and had an opportunity. So now I'm got hired on as a captain, working for an ex-Norfolk guy from up there that I knew pretty well. And now I'm the acting battalion chief in charge of operations. So quite a jump from engine lieutenant to captain to acting battalion for in less than a year, basically. So
yeah, good deal there. I know.
Land of opportunity, man, I guess.
Yeah, but I guess Mike Talley, he'll take care of you though, right?
Oh, for sure. Yep. Absolutely, man. He's a great guy to work for, very knowledgeable and very straightforward, no nonsense type of boss. So
yeah, I did a lot of tech rescue stuff with Mike, so that was fun. So good for you. Thanks, guys, for coming and we'll have to give talk about
Absolutely.
Brian behind his back or something. And
Oh yeah, absolutely.
all right, let's go. Let's
sure
talk a
you'll love
little
that.
bit. Let's talk a little bit about Newport News. What you guys can remember from your time in Newport News. It's an odd city, huh? Very like long, but not very wide.
Right at its,
Exactly.
I think at its widest point, it's well, yeah, almost 3 miles wide. Like we're two basic, main arteries that run. We say north to south, with limited access in between, and that creates like some some response issues, and also one of the things that I'm sure Nick can elaborate on more. 64 runs right through the middle of Newport News, so that stretch of 64 that runs through Newport News and through Hampton Roads is basically the deadliest stretch of 64 in the state. So a lot of business. It's fairly busy. Lower to middle class income, which we know kind of just by the circumstances creates normally more work for us. So Nick, you got anything else?
I think you hit all the main points, man. The only thing I will say is that to include on the two main arteries that run right through with 64, CSX and Amtrak also have a huge presence within the city of Newport News. So kind of goes along with what Steve was saying about limited access. With the train tracks running directly through the middle of the city, it kind of cuts it in half.
So you mentioned neighborhoods. Now I know it goes it goes all the whole way, right? The whole gamut. You got some quiet, exclusive neighborhoods to, like you said, like city, inner city kind of more depressed neighborhoods. But tell me about this shipbuilding thing. Do you guys go respond to that shipbuilding area there?
Yeah, so the Newport News Shipbuilding has its own fire department located on its property. Every once in a while, we'll go over there if requested for fires or pet calls.
Yeah, that looks pretty crazy. That's not a military installation, right? That's a private compound.
Yes,
they take care of like all of the Navy. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, sorry, bud. Yeah, so it's the sole builder of nuclear aircraft carriers
Wow.
in the nation, and then one of only I believe two yards that actually build nuclear subs. So I worked actually before I got on with the fire department. That's where I worked. So it's definitely a heavy industrial, and there hazmat issues. It's really kind of mind blowing the fact that Nick and the guys on the SKU or the tech team or whatever aren't over there more than they really are.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on there, but there must be relatively safe, I guess.
Yeah, it seems that way.
So how do you guys respond? Was there a lot of mutual response in that Tidewater region, or did you guys only did you go outside of the city and people come into the city, or was it all just city incidents run by city department?
So I think they didn't start really responding a lot of mutual aid until here recently. They have a automatic aid agreement with the city of Hampton. So there's only a select few stations that run automatic aid with Hampton, and we just happen to be one of them.
That's Station 2.
Correct.
I got you. But how about down in there, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake? They're pretty mutual response.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think they pretty much in the area they pioneered that type of response together and automatic aid. That model that we started using between Newport News and Hampton was basically mirrored after what they were doing on the south side. So that's the thing about Newport News, Hampton, Williamsburg, James City County, York County, Poquoson. All of that's basically Gloucester referred to as the peninsula, or what we call the and then across the James River, everything else kind of south of us is referred to as the south side. So Southside had been running that type of model between Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Norfolk, and Virginia Beach
Oh, looks like we got
for
Santa
years.
coming back in.
Uh-oh. Here he is.
All right, good.
Sanzo, turn your mic on. Oh,
There he
look at that guy there. One heck of a mustache, brother.
All right, so Brian, you back?
Yeah,
Oh,
turn on
You
your mic,
got
Brian.
to unmute your mic.
He's getting all spun up.
All right. I know you know how to work that thing.
Good.
There you go.
There we go.
Had to do a little work.
All right, thank you for coming back. Appreciate your
Hey.
giving us your time.
No problem.
Just real quick, just introduce yourself to the crowd.
Brian Sanzo, one of the lieutenants here in City of Newport News. That's about it. Lieutenant there on the rescue company.
And how much time do you have on?
Man, the myth, the legend.
Oh, total. Let's see, about 35 years total, but about 30 years with City of Newport News.
How long have you been at the rescue there?
Oh boy, I would say probably a good 14, 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good run.
Yeah, it's
All
been
right,
fun.
well, we are talking right now about Newport News. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the fire department. So with that, 370 members. That's not 370 in the field, right? That includes training, that includes administrative and that kind of stuff.
Give or take, we hover between 370 and 400.
So
So that's some of the support staff that are in there too.
currently 11 stations divided into 2 battalions. Have you added a 3rd battalion yet?
They tried.
I see. There was plans, right? There was plans to add a 3rd.
Oh yes, yes.
So all right. So the 11 stations include 10 engines.
No, actually there should be. That's a little miss.
Should be 11.
Yeah, actually should have 12 because of 201.
12.
We got,
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So how many houses have 2 engines in them?
just 2, or station 2. That's just one house downtown.
And then 2 squads. You still have 2 squads.
Yeah, 2 rescue companies, one in 2nd Battalion and one in 1st Battalion.
So the thing that said it had 2 rescues and 2 squads. It's not right.
Okay, so the squads are different. Those are engine companies with more enhanced capabilities on them. Yeah. Or
So you
backup.
do, I got you. 4 ladders and 2 towers.
Yes.
12 medic units, and that's all 12 24 hours a day.
Oh yes.
And you have 3 EMS supervisors.
Yeah.
What kind of shifts do you guys work there? Schedule
24. 3 and 4.
All right, so the same thing that I worked there. What kind of responses? What kind of units do you send on a fire call? How many units?
Oh shoot. You want to hit that? I mean, I've been answering a bunch of stuff. Does Steve want to answer?
Yeah, I'll hit it if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Let's see if I can jog my memory.
Oh yeah.
So you get a rescue,
Yeah. Mhm.
2 ladders, 3 engines on a working fire, EMS
Yes.
supervisor, the battalion, and a safety officer.
Yeah.
What's the safety? So safety officers are in addition to that rundown that we have there.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, so there's 1 safety officer on duty at all times.
Yeah,
I got you.
they're pretty much automatic.
What's the staffing on an engine? Still, is it 3 or 4?
We'd love to have 4, but we've been running around with 3.
Is it 3 on everything?
Yeah, 3 on everything.
All right, so 2 battalions, and so that means that they've got a pretty good response time for some areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the incident then. Tell me about this neighborhood here. This is obviously Company 2's first new, right?
Yeah.
And this is pretty much your what you see all the whole first new. You get some you get some commercial in there too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Commercial, some industry also.
2-story houses like this. Is there row houses in the first new?
Yeah, 2.5 story wood frames is the main part. Other part, we've got some got a whole area that's a shipbuilding area in the southeast part of the district, and then we have pretty much the seafood markets and the trawlers down at the south end of the district. So the meat of it is 2.5 story wood frames.
So you had been to this place before because you knew the building.
Yeah, Nick had been in there a few times. I know Steve had too.
Yeah, I had gone there for a medic call about 3 days prior to this incident.
So when you were there on the medic call, what did you notice?
Well, right out the gate, we went there and it was a group home. So it was like a halfway house for people with like special needs, and really packed tight, full of stuff, and a little bit of a issue with gaining entrance to the front of the house.
So the call came in. It was like 1:30 in the morning.
Yep.
That sounds about right.
1:30 in the morning on December of 2020. So was it pretty typical weather wise? There wasn't any snow or anything like that out there, right?
It was cold, but kind of dry out that night. I think there was a slight breeze.
Pretty typical night for Company 2 and Rescue 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the day was a pretty typical day for us. I mean, we had I guess if I remember correctly, we were probably working to our probably 12th or 13th run by about 1 in the morning, and we'd already had a small kitchen job maybe later in the afternoon around 5 or dinner time, and that was just a typical day, nothing out of the ordinary. So I already kind of decided in my mind that we'd probably end up running 13, 14 runs, maybe more. And I just remember it was one of those days where I was exhausted, which is not unusual. We would call it, we call it the Station 2 or the 2-house beatdown.
Yeah, I get it. So when you woke up at 1:30, or you were already awake, but again, the thought was definitely that this place is on fire.
Oh yeah.
Indications from indications.
Yeah,
did you get several calls? Is that what I saw somewhere?
Yeah, dispatcher said that they'd received multiple calls. Also, as soon as we made a turn out of the station, you could see it. It was a pretty large amount of fire, pretty good size amount. I mean, it's at least 4 or 5 blocks away from the station, and it's a pretty good glow that you could see.
So when you arrive on the scene, again, this is pretty close to the beginning, or there's some work going on, so it's not right away.
No, that's towards the end.
Yeah.
Oh, it was. So you think that you guys the collapse has already happened and stuff by the time this picture's taken?
Yes.
All right. So you get there. There was no reason for you to think that you couldn't put it out, though, right?
Yeah. Absolutely not. It was I mean, just speaking for myself, and I think we've all talked about this, there's not an indicator in my mind that would have led me to believe anything like this would have gone down, that it was anything other than just heavy fire on the back and maybe and obviously interior of the house, but that was nothing that we hadn't seen before and weren't prepared to deal with.
So Steve, you were the officer in charge of the first arriving engine?
Yes, sir.
And Brian, you were the rescue officer, right?
Yes.
So you guys, couple-minute response, not even, right?
Yeah, not even. It was a hurry up, get your stuff on, and get ready to work.
Did you get a view of all 4 sides before you went in?
Yeah, we pulling up. We got to see a couple of sides. Plus, we actually ran down the D side at one point, to get a visual on the C side, and it was pretty evident the whole back of the house was lit off.
So I read that this was gas fed. Did you know it was gas fed when you started?
No.
All right, so you arrive on scene. I don't have an on-scene report, but you arrive on scene. There's no indication that you weren't good, that you couldn't get in there. Plus, you knew it's a group home, so you got to go in there. You got reports of people trapped, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, so as soon as you get in, what did you find?
Yeah, rescue got in the door, in the front door, made it in right up to the first floor, and found the first victim on the floor, not too far from the front door. That mark, it was a little bit more towards the center of the house, where we located the gentleman.
So let's see what I got here. I got an audio. Okay, so all right, so another transmission that it was a group home, and you got obviously from that transmission we got the engine inside because they're calling for water, right? Did Brian, after they took that victim out, I know you transferred them over to EMS. Did you go complete the primary on the first floor or go right to the second?
Yeah. So what actually happened? We made it in. We grabbed the first gentleman, pulled him out. There was a large crowd that was out front. That was standing there. So I ended up having to start CPR on that gentleman. Steve and then were able to make it in the door and start heading in the first floor to get a knock on it. Josh Rue and Nick, they were going to try to make the stairs for the second floor and go up and see if they could get up there.
Yeah. So once Sansa started CPR on that guy, me and Rue, we made our way back inside of the house, and as soon as we made it to the stairs and started up the stairs, we noticed that there was a electric chairlift that was attached to the stairs, and it wasn't parked down at the bottom. So that led us to believe that it was still parked at the top. So with it being up top, we had all suspicions that there was still somebody upstairs.
Oh yeah, gotcha. So when you got to the second floor, what was the fire conditions like on the second floor?
So initially, and it's a known practice for the rescue guys to search without a hand line. So the only hand line that was in service was the one downstairs with Steve and his crew. So when me and Rue made it to the top of the stairs, it was super, super hot and very uncomfortable, zero visibility. We made it about halfway down the hallway to the left, and Rue made the suggestion that we should back out and get a second hose line to bring upstairs with us. And I'm really glad that we did.
Yeah, at that point, I had turned over the medic crew was not too far off grabbing the guy. As I'm heading into the house, I'm running into him on the steps and he's saying, hey, we need a line upstairs. And I've worked with Nick long enough. If he's saying we need a line upstairs, we need a line upstairs. We usually don't search with him, but we needed to beat the fire back enough to be able to get to the other person that was up there.
And there was no other company there yet to bring you a line.
No, the other engine
company too.
Yeah. So engine 201, which was the
so
next
you
engine
decided to go get line.
Yeah.
It was one of those fires that you knew was bad. It pushed you all the way to the floor.
Yeah.
But you also knew that there's people in there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Let's see what this audio here says. All right, so you made it back in. This one down here. Okay. So, Steve, you guys thought you were making good progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as Nick and Brian said, we were getting our butts kicked, but we were working hard. We were making good progress. We were putting out a lot of fire. The conditions were getting better. I actually, I know a lot of people frown upon this, but I actually called for an additional line on the backside or the exterior on the Charlie Delta, or excuse me, Bravo Charlie corner, because from our perspective, looking out the back of the house, it looked like a plane crash. So we knew we needed a little bit of help. They weren't actually putting water inside the house, in our direction. They were actually trying to put out or knock a little bit of the fire down on the back, because as you can see from the first floor plan, there was an actual porch that kind of, we were separated by an actual wall, and so we were having issues kind of getting a knock on that fire on the exterior on the Charlie end of the actual house. But yeah, I mean, things were going good. We were once again not a adopted practice in Newport News that the engine crew searches off the line, but we knew people were in, so I was trying to do my best while the guy on the nozzle, Billy King, he was doing a heck of a job, and I was backing him up, and then every once in a while we'd shut down, check our progress. I try to search that area, and then we open back up and try to put out more of that fire.
One thing, I keep my slideshow's going crazy here because I keep pressing the wrong button. But one thing, I know you guys identified this early on, like before you went in, right? That there was bars on the windows. I think you made a transmission to work on that. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
So
looks
as
like,
soon as me and Rue backed out of the house to go get that second line, I looped around the Delta side of the building and noticed that there was bars on the windows, and that's when I made the transmission to get the bars cut.
yeah, it looks like Fort Knox. So, all right. So now we're back inside. And this is after the collapse. So let me play this real quick. Let me get this one. All right. So the first one was you, Brian, making the call. Second, that was you, Steve, right?
Yep.
Ultimately, what, you guys were like feet from each other at this point, right?
We didn't know where we were, actually. I didn't know if I was in a basement or where the hell I was at.
So look at the diagram
Yeah.
here, and we had definitely collapse. Most of the collapse was all on that porch on the seaside.
Yeah.
And was that like a dining room area in the house?
Yeah, I think it was as you came in the front door and you took that left-hand turn and you went back towards the Charlie side. I think you went through more of what used to be a formal dining room that had been converted to basically a junk room, and then there towards the middle where we ended up, that was basically I think more of a living space.
So and Brian, at the time this happened, these two blue squares X's over here were over on here on the second floor.
Yes, we were on the
Right?
second floor. Yeah.
So at this point, the whole rescue company was on the second floor.
Yes. Yes.
Correct.
Josh Rue was towards the front searching that first bedroom to the left. Nick was right in front of me. And as we were going through the door to get the other gentleman, that's when we felt the floor slide to the seaside. There was a slide basically towards the seaside that I knew. I was like, I'm reaching to grab Nick, try to pull him back, and it was too late. We were too far in, and then in seconds it just went down the toilet. It went bad.
So
It was one of those feelings that you knew as soon as it started to go, you knew.
Yeah.
So Steve, I'm still. You guys were covered, right? That second floor came down on top of you guys.
Yeah. 1 second everything was good. I took a couple of steps back, grabbed some more line because my plan was to get us close, maybe even get through that back door or window leading into the porch, so we could get to the main body of the fire at that point. And just without warning, I just felt initially a lot of pressure on my head. Somehow, I ended up on my stomach and my face, just completely covered with debris. Structural members from the ceiling, the roof. I mean the floor above us, and then the carpet. Now we know the victim. All the stuff that is on the second floor, and the rescue crew, or two guys, Brian and Nick.
Yeah. So I mean, there was enough of a void so that it didn't continue to sandwich you onto the floor.
Yeah, I think once we looked at it, it looked like there's some type of old exercise equipment or something, and when everything came down the way that it did, I was pinned at one point for a few seconds. I wasn't able to move, but luckily, just the way that it all ended up in the position that I ended in, on my face, my mic was actually touching my mask. So that was the only thing I could see. Somehow, I had one hand kind of almost on my mic already. So I was able to transmit, but at that point, I didn't know if I was transmitting at all. I didn't know if my mic had been severed. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know where the Billy, the guy on the nozzle, was. I couldn't hear anything. And then at some point, I think the guys on the rescue moved a couple of things. They were trying to get themselves out and for us at the same time. And when they moved something large, I'm not sure what it was, but it created enough of a void. I just remember seeing Sanzo's box light, and that gave me an indicator, hey, this is the way I need to go. And then we could kind of hear each other. And eventually I got close enough to that Charlie side of the house where the porch did not exist anymore. And Billy, the nozzleman, was able to grab my harness and kind of help me towards the window. And then that's the way we got out.
So you guys were out pretty quick.
Yeah, I'd say, a minute or two. We were lucky. We just happened to be in that area where there was nothing really keeping us from getting out that window.
All right, Brian, you and Nick slid down.
Yeah.
And you were basically on top of the engine.
Yeah.
But you couldn't get out.
No, so Nick was thrown farther.
You guys were trapped for a little bit longer, right?
Yeah, Nick was thrown farther than I was. He was thrown farther forward, and I didn't know where he was. I could hear his voice, and I kept asking him. I was like, Nick, you all right? And he's like, yeah. And I said, where are you? And he said, I'm down here in this void, down in this room down here. Well, I could hear where he was, where his voice was coming from. And all the contents on that second floor had kind of slid against that center wall. So I'm stuck against the center wall with a bunch of debris from the room. So at that point, trying to climb straight out. I remember Josh Rue saying, "Hey, if you could pull that line out, I could keep the fire off of you." Well, that was great, but the nozzle was wrapped up in the debris. We couldn't get to it. I couldn't even see the line. So from there, I just ended up sliding sideways and sliding towards Nick's voice. I could hear him talking, and the whole time I'm thinking, I'm like, I'm responsible for these guys. I gotta find them. I've got to get my hands on these guys. I'm responsible for them. And I got towards where Nick was, and he was right. It dropped off into this little bit of a void, and he was down in this kitchen area. At the time, we didn't know it was the kitchen area, but we dropped down into that void that he was in.
And I'd like to add too. So, like you were saying, Rue asked us to pass the line back up to him, and that wasn't doable. So, with that being said, Rue took it upon himself to immediately back out of the house and go and tell command exactly where we were at.
Yeah. Sure enough. The once I got down to Nick, I don't know how many times I asked him if he was all right. I mean, I worked with his father, I worked with his grandfather. Yeah. I told him, I said, "Hey Nick," I said, we're gonna get out of here. And I remember as soon as I said that, I was like, "Oh crap, I better be able to deliver," And that was at the point that I Nick said he was good. I knew I was good. I could move. It's like, okay, let's get Steve and Billy King out. When I looked across, I didn't know who I was looking at. I didn't know if it was Steve or Billy, but I knew there was somebody on the other side there, which ended up being Billy King, and I couldn't see Steve. But I was like, let's get over to them. So we started digging through that debris, but it was frustrating. As we were digging through, more crap was falling. So it's like we were making absolutely no progress at all. It was really frustrating. So, I'm glad
the amount of stuff that we moved was insane.
Yeah, it felt like we were just spinning our wheels. We weren't getting anywhere. And the collapses towards the A side and the B side, we could somewhat see where Steve and them, once they got loose, it was so good to see two standing there, because for the longest time I just saw one frantically digging, and I'm like, that's not good. I got to get over there to them. Well, then when we saw both of them and they popped out and then dumped out of that window, I'm like, they're good. And I told Nick, I said, "Nick, let's keep heading in this direction, get over this pile, and we'll go out the same way." Right. Well, that didn't work. We tried, and there was too much crap in the way. It was just piled up. And the more we moved, the more crap fell down. So I think we were like, we got to find another way out.
And there was also still active fire.
Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, well, we're getting ready to find out really how good our gear is, and that's pretty much, I was like, this isn't good. So we need to find another way out pretty quick. So we went towards the seaside, which is burning pretty bad. Towards like that CD corner is where we went. I remember Nick found a door. You want to talk about the door, Nick? It was on the other side.
Yeah, I'll talk about the door.
Yeah.
So we're searching this little room, what ended up being the kitchen. So I find this door on the seaside, and I go to open up the door, and that's when we found out that it was a gas-fed fire, because as soon as I opened that door up, it started shooting flames over top of our head. So quickly, Santa looks back, and he says, "You need to shut that door." So I shut the door, and then he ended up piling. I think it was another door?
Yeah, it was a folding door that I found there that was broke off, and I just grabbed it and threw it over it. And the whole thing, I was like, anything I could put more crap between the fire and where myself and Nick were located. I was like, then I started thinking to myself, well, I just probably threw more crap on it to burn, but I was just trying to just pile up some stuff to try to slow it down a bit and take some of the heat off of us.
No, you said there was a door back here in this area that was keeping the fire outside.
Yeah, directly to the right of your cursor, that little room. It's like right in front of the first blue X. Yep, that one right there. There was a door ended up being like a little half bath. But when the building collapsed, it fell down, and we didn't know that it broke off the gas main, which lit off.
I got you. So you guys were basically the fire
Got
was
another
on
run.
the Charlie side. Where are you going now?
All right, see ya.
The fire was on the Charlie side. The collapse is all behind you. And every time you move something, it just kind of added more. So you couldn't really escape. Is that what you're getting, Nick?
Yeah, so like I said, the door thing happened. We could not go out that way. So now we're literally trapped inside the kitchen area. So as soon as Santa put that folding door up against there, I started sweeping, and then I found what was the counter space where the sink and stuff were. And normally above the sink, there's a window. So I found the window. All of our tools got lost with the hose when we fell through the floor. So we had nothing left. And the only thing I could think of was I had my helmet on. So I took my helmet off and busted the window out with my helmet, and just ended up sticking my arms out through the window, and found that there were bars still on the windows themselves. So I just kept waving and hollering out the window until somebody seen me.
That was this window here.
Correct.
That was that one, which is behind other side of this fence here.
Yep.
Right, separated there. So you got crews on the outside. Let me get to see if I can play this audio here.
We've gone the ladder, Charlie 5, second floor window. Rescue 1 command. Rescue 1 command. No, rescue 1. Is rescue 2 accounted for? Rescue. Is your 2 accounted for? I have firefighter Lee outside. You got a problem with you. Medicaid. Relocated.
Let me see if I get this one. Oh.
Rescue 1 go. We're in the kitchen area. On the B side. Got walls to me now. Not on the other side of it. Good ball copy. Which department? 22? Yeah, I'm 22. Where's the command? Medic 3 to command.
All right, so that was you had found the window. You're waving outside now. Obviously, somebody found you.
Yeah.
Rescue 1 gets to the structure. East side. 1-2. Where's on the out? Command all units. Withdraw from the structure. Be on the east side. Command all units. Withdraw from the structure. Be on the east side.
All right, so you got out. You're out. You got out this window. Everybody's accounted for. Now we're gonna change to a defensive fire. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that was the strategy until they could determine that the structural integrity was good enough to actually get in there and attempt any type of overhaul. Because as you can see, around that bump out on the front, the dormer, the knee walls, and all that, we still had a lot of fire in those areas. So it was either burn the roof off or try to knock it down and extinguish it from the outside, which I think we were having some issues doing until they finally decided. They sent I think it was one crew back inside. Obviously had multiple writs, I think, established, and we had already. It's a policy in Newport News when you have a Mayday or a writ activation it's an automatic second alarm response, and then based on the fact that it was actually a group home or boarding house, they had even taken more precaution and requested extra units on top of that. So I think it was a calculated risk. I didn't know if that really we had any other people still in the structure that were unaccounted for. I think initially, or not initially, but at one time they were thinking 3 or 4 people at least. Luckily, we just knew, now we know that there were only 2. But yeah, I think that was a tough call to make, just based on the potential for, other individuals or occupants being inside.
Yeah, so I'm sizing up the building, and this window is on the Delta side, right? It's over here on this alley here.
Right.
Yeah, so all this is where you guys were, Steve. You guys were like underneath all this pile here.
Well, we're actually back inside, just on the right of your cursor. It looks like a long door right there. Is actually a window on the Charlie side next to the actual. Let's see. So right in the center of the porch there, you can see it looks like a door or a window. We were actually back inside there.
In this area right here.
Yep, a little bit further inside interior towards the front of the house, but yeah.
Wow. Yeah, pretty amazing. If I'm take you through this is some pictures that I had. This is when you came in the foyer here, right? The front main entrance.
Correct.
So everything looks pretty solid. You go back, that's amazing to me, the way that the stairs look. The stairs look like, like the back half of the house should still be there, right? It's obviously solid from the middle of that house all the way to the A side, right? I mean, it was still pretty solid, right? From about here all the way.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, so there you go. So that's basically the area that just completely let go. And I think, like Brian was saying, I think now that we've had some, ample time to really consider what happened, I think once the back of the house collapsed, it cracked the house just enough, and we know now that there have been multiple renovations done to this house, and they weren't really done to code, if you will, and so I think that had a large effect on it. Plus, most of that house was infested with termites, so just a perfect storm. Yeah.
So this picture, whoever's taking this picture is standing right here at this X, right?
Yeah, I was standing right there basically on the edge. That's where the rescue had made their push. They'd actually crossed that threshold into the bedroom, and I think the next day, when they were doing the tertiary search, they were looking for the missing occupant. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think their nozzle was 2 or 3 foot from the body of the victim.
Yeah.
So, but it felt pretty, when you were standing here, it felt pretty solid.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Stand there, your mic's still off, bud.
Wow. Yeah, that stairway there, and even this foyer here looks like it's pretty solid. And then, when you're standing, you can look. I mean, it's still pretty good, right inside there. I mean, especially before you cross over that peak of the roof.
Yeah, you can see there's some sag in the roof a little bit, but some of that was from the fire. Some of that's just, you're going to have that in some of these houses of that age. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, to this day, I don't think there's anything that I would have done differently. Especially knowing that we survived and we made it through. I feel like if I had done anything differently, maybe the outcome would have been not so good.
So do they know what started this fire? Obviously, there's a lot of damage there, but to go back and figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a topic for debate, I think. Brian, I'll let you, since you're so politically correct, I'll let you take that one.
No, I'm supposed to watch my language on this, but so the investigators, I guess the last stance they took, they basically said that there was a pretty good chance that it could have been arson. but they were trying to do all the rule outs and go through and see, if, just try to, see if it was a gas or cooking problem or something of that nature. But, and Steve probably alluded to this earlier, they had just returned from a run not long before this call came in. So for it to get as advanced as it did in such a short amount of time, it just doesn't make sense. So, and for that picture that you're showing right now, there's a spot right there that's just completely empty right there in the driveway. There was a car that was sitting there that, during the fire that night, it was just, it was damn near completely incinerated. That car was. I mean, it was burning pretty bad. It almost, like I said, it looked like somebody had dropped a plane in the block when we pulled in there. That's really what it looked like.
I got you. So we think that the gas part of it was a result it was a result, not a cause.
Yes.
I
Yes.
got it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, pretty amazing. So you guys said there was some things that you think contributed to your survival.
Oh yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, for sure.
I think all of these guys and anybody that you talk to, especially in Newport News and hopefully elsewhere, the East End, Station 2, just some solid, hard charging firemen. And I mean, training is obviously something that made a big difference. I didn't really feel panicked or stressed at any point during this event, is because we put ourselves in that kind of situation, and we've been in tight spots before. So we kind of trained to that, and I think we have a reputation to uphold, and we're proud of that.
So some of that reputation is this, right? Is that no one's coming. It is up to us.
Yeah. Absolutely. Station
Absolutely.
2, we and you can ask these guys and they'll speak to it. We refer to it as the 2 bubble. Just because the neighborhood, the area itself, we are kind of autonomous, or we were, they still are. And that's a good thing. I mean, we want to be the guys that everybody wants to come help them. And if you want to come help us, that's great, but we're not going to depend on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Chances if you're laughing.
Yeah. High level of emphasis.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Coming out of the academy.
Go ahead,
Tony.
Go ahead, man.
I was just say, coming out of the academy, you always hear all these crazy, cool stories about all these, real firemen being down at number 2. That's the place that you want to be at. And, my dad and my granddad were started at number 2. So that's where I wanted to go when I came out of the academy. And I can say that I was absolutely honored to have been able to go down to number 2 and have the experiences that I did with those guys.
Hey, Tony, one of the things that I do think that played into us being in a familiar place when that whole thing cut loose. One of the things that the training that we receive and that we usually give every recruit school, and they've had to dial it back over the years, but we used to do these, basically they were RIT burns is what they called them. They would basically build props inside the burn building and trap some of the mannequins under pretty tight conditions, under live fire conditions, under heavy, a pretty good amount of heat that you had to operate in. So, to say when this has happened before, our folks pretty much stay pretty calm and think through these things because you're in a familiar place. We've been put in that type of environment before. So I don't think any of us that were in there, we've seen this type of situation before, and just through our training, and we're able to function. Now, they kind of dialed it back over the years just for the sheer fact that they didn't want to violate any rules or regulations. But I truly believe in having training as close as a real thing as you possibly can. You can put safety measures in place to be able to remove people out of there if there's a problem. And I'm very thankful to have received that training over the years. And I know these guys probably are too. And it's probably what saved our life.
We can speak more to that in a second. But again, Mayday and self-rescue are integrated in all aspects of training. Every day is a training day, right? And again, you know me, right? Is that I'd rather have. I'm okay with a dirty firehouse as long as we got a trained crew, right?
Yeah.
When we go out there, they're not going to be pissed off that my firehouse is dirty. They're going to be pissed off that I can't perform. So with that
100%.
also, with that attitude, and again, this is not necessarily something that you can train, right? I mean, yes, if you bring people in and kind of indoctrinate them, if you will, perhaps they'll come away with that attitude. And I think the bullet point number 2, I think is a big one. And again, confidence, not arrogance. And I think people mistake sometimes. They mistake that for arrogance and that you're confident in your job. But and we all know those people that we're happy to see show up on the fire ground. And it sounds like Firehouse 2 would be that company. So you want to speak to this? Anybody want to speak to this?
So the whole confidence is not arrogance. That's just that. I think we run across people in this line of work that are interested in looking good, and if you're good at your job, that comes naturally. You don't even the pride in what you do, it has nothing to do with how you look, and the respect that you get from other people. They may hate you as a person. They may not even want to hang out with you, but damn, they like it and they want to see you show up on scene. That's something that I think Station 2 has had a reputation or been accused of being a cult. We've been accused of being rogue, and that's just because it's a tight crew, because we know how serious the consequences are, and we take it seriously. And even and we say it all the time, and I say it down here where I'm at now. Being adequate is not good enough. Why would you not want to be great at this job? And none of us are ever going to be good enough. So you surround yourself with strong people, with a lot of experience. Yeah, they're going to bust your balls, but you're going to learn from them, and they're going to make you better. And hopefully nobody has to experience what we did, but I think one of some of the reasons that we made it through as good as we did is because of our attitude, our training, and the background, and just the confidence. And I think sometimes that confidence, not arrogance, and not being overconfident, that helps you make strong decisions, and not hopefully keeps you from making those critical mistakes.
I have to agree 100% with Steve too. You being down at number 2, it doesn't matter if you're the newest guy on the floor or somebody like Sansa that's got 30 plus years in the fire service. Everybody's on the same playing field when it comes to getting trained up right, and everybody's brought up to par to meet the Station 2 expectations. And with coming along with that, you build that trust with your guys, and I think trust had a huge thing to go with working that night. Not only have I worked with Sanzo on my part-time shifts, but I've known him forever. I've volunteered with him over in Smithfield for years. So having that trust already built up, it was huge, at least for me, being in that situation next to Sanzo, and then knowing that Steve and Billy King were squared away because we've all done the same training was just, I think that speaks magnitudes.
I'm going to go to the next one. You can add in a second, Brian. Experience. This is a tough one, right? Because you cannot, you can't go make experience. So, but you can make the most of what you experience, right? All right. You want to, Brian? You want to speak to experience versus time?
Yeah. Experience as far as over the years, wanting to be at houses that went to fires and wanting to go to fires, doing things to try to increase my number of fires, even when I was off duty. The more you get exposed to it, the more, you're going to pick things up. I mean, I've screwed up a lot of stuff over the years. I never did it right all the time. And sometimes we get lucky and we do get it right. But, that the experience of, not being scared to do your job, not being scared to make a decision, and then being able to change gears and work through the problem that you've gotten yourself into. I think it helps you out, for many years of making mistakes, I guess you could say, and learning the right way to do it. As far as time, though, I mean, we all know it. We see guys on the job that get on the job and maybe don't get to a busy house, maybe are out for a while or end up on an 8-hour assignment and stuff. And it's unfortunate, that sometimes things like that do happen. But the more you do it, I think the more you get comfortable with doing the job, and it pays off in situations like this.
Finally, one thing you mentioned, and when we talked before, Brian, you mentioned some of this stuff. There's this the fire department there again, and I think that we're seeing a good renaissance, if you will, on really getting back to basics when it comes to equipment. And we're looking at them, and we're measuring them, we're testing these things. We're not just going out and buying stuff low bid and putting it on the rig, right? We do a concerted effort to make sure we're getting the right stuff, and it looks like Newport News Fire Department made a good investment. And did just that, right? Got you some good equipment, got you a good attack package, which I think that we take these things for granted sometimes, and we don't put time into them. But it works. Speak to that a little bit about. You want to start with the firefight part there first, with the hose line and the attack package?
You want me to hit that, Tony, or Steve? Doesn't matter. I can speak on it. That's fine. So we have a gentleman in our department. We call him the doctor, West, Denny West, who basically took that nozzle package with the hose that we were using and made sure that we were using the best package possible to deliver the most amount of water and to be as effective as possible. And this is the package he came up with. It was a 7/8 tip with the Key Combat hose. I truly believe that the amount of fire that we were able to put out that night ended up having a positive result on us surviving this thing. If we hadn't have beat the fire back as much as we did and the building had cut loose, there's no doubt in my mind we would have been incinerated. But the volume of fire that package put out was just unbelievable.
Steve, you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've all, been on committees or parts of groups where, we're testing new equipment, or we're looking at new gear, we're looking at new, SCBAs. And, that's one thing that, I think every organization goes through, ebbs and flows, or peaks and valleys, if that's what you want to call it. But, while I was in Newport News, we really put a lot of work into researching the equipment, looking at the people that do it a lot more than us, and seeing what works well for them, trying to, pick up on cues that they're giving us. And then, with the gear and the SCBAs, extensive testing went on, previously, and with the newest packs that we were running in, that was probably one of the longest evaluations that I had, been able to be involved with. And like I said, very extensive, but, to the end of, you think about and what we don't want to go wrong. So that's why we focus on certain things a little more than others, and really pay attention to what other people are telling us, and then base that, compare that to our own experience. And this is what we came up with. So, I can't I can't 100% say that things would be any different if we were in any different gear, using a different pack, or even using a different attack package. But this is what we know works really well for us, and that's something that we've invested a lot of time in. So just really fortunate.
All right, let's talk about injuries. Was it anybody? What were the injuries after this this collapse?
The biggest thing was like some bruised egos, I think. But no, I think Billy King, yeah, go ahead, Nick. The guy, the nozzleman, he got burned pretty good on his face and his ears. Was out of work for some time. I had some burns on my neck and my back. Sanzo, what about you?
Yeah, just bad bruises, and then just a minor, nothing big, just a normal as far as neck, things like that. But as far as bruises, yeah, we were busted up pretty bad.
Nick, you were good.
Yeah, I was good for the most part. I think the big thing that touched me and Sansa is when that big old dresser came down and slipped us. But between that and the only other injury I had was a burn from I was wearing a necklace that night, and the necklace got heated up and burned me pretty good.
Who lost? Who was off the most?
Billy King.
And everybody else was back like the next shift, right?
Oh yeah.
I drug myself in there.
You didn't want to take a day off.
I had to go back.
No, I understand.
Not only did they all come back to shift the next day, we also tried to get back in to the house after we got out of it. We tried to make a push back inside. We were told no.
They wouldn't let us. Yeah.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. One of the things, again, Mayday Mondays is about learning from this, and I think one of the things that you credit with some survival to was being able to get out of that kitchen window. And if it wasn't for a quick thinking, well, I mean, sounds like a senior guy outside. If it wasn't for him, it might have been it would have been a delayed time. It would have taken longer to get you out. But somebody had some good saw skills, and they put him to work to get that. In fact, from what I understand, right, he had to stand on this fence here. Let me go back to the picture. Right, he had to stand. He stood on this fence while he reached over to cut the bars.
Yes.
That's not. You can't do that by luck, right? You can't do that by luck. You have to do that by training and knowing your equipment. So that's what we want you to do this month. This month's skill drill is get out and do some practice, some saw work. You can make some makeshift props if you want to do that. You can, if you have a nice prop, obviously get out and do that, right? Cut some rebar, cut wood, cut up pallets if you have to, but do something to practice this and get some saw work in so you're ready for this very scenario, because you never know when it might happen. So what I usually like to do is have our guests that are on here give us 2 or 3 things that they think they would want people to take from their incident. A lot of times, we talk about line of duty deaths. This obviously, we avoided that. We were able to avoid the line of duty death. And what can you guys come up with something that you think people should learn from what you went through? Nick, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'd say always rely on the training that you have, that you receive. In a situation that we were put in, if you all ever get in a tight spot like that, just take a minute, take a deep breath, and regroup, and clear your head and come up with a game plan. You come up with multiple game plans while you're thinking about it. That way, if something doesn't work out, you got something else to fall back on. Don't ever give up.
Steve, you have something you want people to learn from?
Yeah, absolutely. Treat every single day as a training day. You don't have to train hard. You don't have to go all out every day. But, you know, at the bare minimum, be intimately familiar with your gear and how to use it and what your procedures are, because the structure and the repetition, those are your friends. In a situation like we all went through, none of us were really making decisions and processing all that information all at once. You know, what we did is we reverted back to the very fundamental lowest level of our training, and thankfully the lowest level of our training was pretty high, and so it was automatic for us, you know. So everybody just did it like it was second nature. We knew how to use our packs. We were familiar with the gear that we're in. None of that felt foreign to us, and we were very, you know, for the most part, ironically, very comfortable in that situation, and that's what training does for you.
Brian, you're still here? You didn't get a call?
No, we're good here for a second. You know, pretty much, you know, I had it in my mind that this house wasn't going to keep us in here. You know, I'm not letting this house keep us, you know. I mean, we're do everything we got to get the hell out of here. You know, and the other thing, stop for a second and listen. You know, listen to what's going on. Listen to where your folks are. You know, that couple of seconds, just stopping and listen. Sometimes it's hard. You got to cover that radio up because there's so much doggone traffic going on, but cover it up, take a listen, and listen to where your folks are, and then get in there and get your hands on them. You know, get your hands on them as quick as possible. But no, that just the determination that house wasn't going to keep us. I mean, that was the, you know, that's what we had set in our mind.
So you know how many times last year on Mayday Monday we talked about a tactical pause, right?
Yeah.
Take a second. So
second.
that it kind of goes back to that. One thing. All right, everybody. Thank you guys for coming in. Thank you for dealing with our little difficulties with Brian getting runs, Nick in his secret location that we can't talk about. Thank you guys. For the listeners out there, one thing you heard from all three of them were very basics. There really isn't a whole lot of firefighting, you know, graduate school. Most of this stuff is very, very basic. But it also goes back to what we talk about here: preparation, right? Preparation. They couldn't have done any of this stuff with luck. So you can't use that as your plan, right? Luck's a 4-letter word. Plan is too a 4-letter word. Training is not. Preparation is not. So that's what we want. That's what you need to do. That's what this year is going to be about in Mayday Monday. Hopefully you'll stick with this through the whole year with more basic stuff. But remember that firefighter survival starts with the basics, and that's what we're going to talk about. And that's what these guys talked about. Thank you guys for coming. Anybody got one last word they need to give, or you're good?
Brian?
No, thank you. Good seeing you guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Fire Engineering. Thanks for January 2023 Mayday Monday. We'll see you. Bye-bye.